21st, 2025 meeting. Madam Secretary, do we have a roll call?
Commission Member Mead?
Was it me? I can't tell when you say
Mead.
Mead or Lee here.
Commission Member McPhail?
Here.
Commission Member Bedard?
Here.
Vice Chairman Lee?
Present.
And Chairman Malakoff?
Present. At this time, I'd like to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to our great country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, I'd like to confirm the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the agenda.
Okay. There's no changes. We're on to public comments. The public is invited to address the Planning Commission on any matter not on the agenda. If you wish to speak on the agenda item, please wait to be recognized under the item. Except for special circumstances, the Brown Act prohibits the Planning Commission or staff from responding to or taking action on any comments made by the public unless it pertains to an item that appears on the agenda. All speakers should give their name and city of residence, and please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. If you want to speak, and there's speaker slips right outside, and you can give it to the secretary. And it's my understanding we got 2 online comments.
We have received 2 comments from the public, and I'll just read for the record that the following comment was received for the record to the members of the Planning Commission and made available for public inspection at the entrance to the room this evening. David Koslow provided comments related to the November 2026 election. We did receive 2 comments. The second one, the following comment was received for the record to the members of the Planning Commission and made available for public inspection at the entrance from Barry Freet, provided comments on the speed limit survey.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So the next item, item 2A, is the approval of the April 16th, 2025 minutes. Does anybody have any additions and or corrections? If not, do we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
We'll wait for the machine to catch up.
Every time I have a vote.
I think we need to do a roll call. It just went away, and I didn't do it.
All right, we'll do by roll call. We just did this before. Apologies. All right, Commissioner Mead.
Aye.
Commissioner McPhail.
Aye.
Commissioner Bedard.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lee.
Aye.
Chairman Malakoff.
Aye.
Thank you. Let the record show that a motion was made and seconded and that the motion passes.
Okay, the next item is Zoning Code Amendment 25-003 to adopt a resolution recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending Title IX of the Planning and Zoning Code of the Cathedral City Municipal Code to add Chapter 9.09, Public Notification and Community Meetings, and to amend Chapters 9.05, 9.52, 972, 974, 976, and 978 to delete existing provisions that conflict with the new Chapter 909 relating to public notification requirements. Ms. Molina, do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as indicated by Chairman Malakoff, this is a public hearing for a zoning ordinance amendment to establish a new chapter and amending other chapters for consistency purposes. And as we indicated during the workshop last time, zoning ordinance amendments do require public hearing before the Planning Commission, and the Commission makes a recommendation. It'll go back, and then it'll go to the City Council for introduction and ultimately adoption. And we have discussed this two previous times, and so I think we're all familiar. I'll briefly go over, though, some background, as this is a public hearing. There are members in the audience and also that may be watching that may not have the background that we do. So again, this whole discussion started with a project that was before the commission, and in the vicinity just next door was apartment complex, and so the topic of do residents within apartment complexes and other non-owner occupied dwellings, do they get notice? And if they're not, why don't we look at that and how we can get notice to them? And so we did have a discussion in March and again a one in April to look at potential changes to our code to enhance our public notification process, including community engagement. And so we did have a number of discussions. We talked about expanding the notification radius to 500 feet. Standard all projects, and projects greater than 5 acres would be notification up to 750 feet radius. We also looked at expanding the notification to the non-property owners within the mailing radius. Then we also had a discussion about community engagement, what that would look like, developers' responsibilities, the city's responsibilities, what the procedures would be, and summarizing a report back to the city for the commission's reference and edification. And then also, this requirement would be on properties of 5 acres or more. So that was generally the discussion and the topics. We looked at a draft ordinance last time, or draft changes to our code in a new chapter. There were some recommendations, and so the report that's before the commission takes those exhibits from last time and makes changes. For this evening, I'll discuss Chapter 909, which is the new one and has changes from our last meeting. The draft resolution that's in the packet has a draft ordinance, has 2 exhibits to that draft ordinance. One is Chapter 9.09, and the other one is a list of all the different other chapters that would be amended to make sure that we're consistent with our new code. There's no changes to that particular exhibit from our last discussion, so I'm not going to go into a discussion of that other than to say it's consistent with what we talked about last time. But with respect to these particular expanded notification, so again, the radius, what's in the draft ordinance is consistent with what was discussed last time on April 16th. We did make some changes to the notification, and I'll go into that a little bit more. And then just a few changes on the community engagement provision, just for some clarification, and I'll also go over that. And then, as we discussed, on-site public hearing signs, we're going to table that for now. It's not in our code. We can look at it, when we do our update if we need to re-engage that discussion. So, in our new chapter, Chapter 909, we did make some changes to the public hearing and public notice. And so on the right-hand side, there's some edits that were made. What I did was make a distinction between notice to real property owners and then to occupants of non-owner occupied property, whether it's businesses, residents of apartments, renters of single-family properties. And so I wanted to go ahead and separate that because the real property owners get notice, and we get that information from Riverside County records. For everyone else, we're getting that through various data that we keep, business licensing information that we have, knowing that it's an apartment complex or a mobile home complex, then we can reach out to those property managers. We can look at our data and try to get that occupant information to mail notices to them. But one of the changes I'm proposing is that when we do send notification to a business owner or a occupant or tenant of residential property, that we only send it to for those properties that are within our city limits. And the reason why we're making this change is that our IT department reached out to our adjacent cities and asked, hey, how do we get this information? Can we get this information from you? And wasn't successful in getting an answer back. And so that's the reason for the change. The other change was to paragraph F, which was a new one. And this is just language that's already in our government code that says, hey, if you don't get a notice, that doesn't mean the public hearing's invalid or the commission's action's invalid. So I just wanted to stick that in there. Over on the left side, the box. That paragraph comes from a new act that was adopted. The language to that bill was provided via email to the commission. But what that says is that when a zoning ordinance amendment or zoning ordinance affects uses on real property, then the public hearing notification is a minimum of 20 days prior to the hearing. And the code is, or the law is very specific, 20-day notice for the planning commission's hearing. It doesn't make that same requirement for city council meetings. And so here are the way it's written, whether it's planning commission or city council, it's going to be 20 days, unless the commission wants to just be as specific as the government code and say for planning commission. And there would be a basis for that. If you think about that through this process, it's 20 days, we've expanded the radius, we've expanded who we give notice to, and we have for 5 acres or greater a community meeting. And so if the commission was of the opinion that that whole expanded notification is sufficient to get notice to members or to interested parties for planning commission, and when you get to council, there's already been all this outreach that 10 days makes sense and just keep it with what it is, we can do that as well. But for now, it's 20 days. It's up to the commission if they want to make a change on that, and that's easily something we can read into the record and can go forward to council. And just a few other changes on section 9.09.020. This had to do with community engagement. There were some other changes that had to do with correcting section numbers or just being consistent with the terminology throughout that exhibit. I'm not talking about it here in the presentation. It was very, I think, clear in the exhibits that were received by the commission. But this first change on the top left, this was a comment by Commissioner Lee, or Vice Chair Lee, excuse me, that when it comes to providing notice for these community engagement meetings, that not all of it can be provided through the tax assessment rules, and so we're clarifying that. And then these other two sections was a comment from Chair Malakoff that at the community engagement meeting that there be an opportunity for attendees to also say, yes, I want to be notified of public hearings regarding this item. And so we're making that change, and then we're being consistent in a subsequent section of that particular provision in the code. So those are the changes that were made since the meeting. So, as indicated in the staff report, the recommendation that will move forward to the City Council, if the Commission moves this forward, is to find this project, the amendment, exempt from CEQA, and also attached to the staff report was the public hearing notice that was published in the paper. And
Thank you.
with
Thank
that,
you, Ms. Molina.
Yes. Our recommendation is for the Planning Commission to adopt the resolution and move this item forward. And I'm available for any questions.
Now we're into questions before we have commissioner discussion. Commissioner Mead, do you have any questions?
2 questions, since I'm sure someone will ask about it. Do we know what the cost implications are of this expanded notice? Because obviously it's a lot more mail that's going out to an additional group of people. I just don't want us to be blindsided by someone later at council saying it's going to cost, whatever.
We, cost, no. But what we did with our recent update to our fees, which was comprehensively updated, is in conferring with our IT department and the additional notice and getting that information, compiling that information, we estimated about 4 hours of time on their end. The mailed notice, that's a cost that's recouped as well, but it's going to depend on how many notices. So, if something had currently maybe 80 notices and we double that, then it's just whatever that cost is.
So, but is that, when you're saying that cost is recouped, it's recouped from the developer?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's not an out-of-pocket cost that we would just be increasing our spend?
Correct.
I mean, I personally think it's worth it to engage the community and let people know, but I just wanted to know if there was a cost. Okay. And then the other thing is, obviously, we're going through the new development code update right now, and this is something that's getting potentially adopted in the middle of that process, will this kind of get slotted into whatever they're working on so we don't have to go back and add it later?
Yes, we will provide this to our consultant.
Okay, great. Those are my only questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, do you have any questions?
No.
Commissioner Bedard?
Sure, the 20-day, can you go back to the slide about the 20 days? And you had said,
Yes.
yeah, that one, that at least 20 days before the hearing. The reason for the 20 is compared to the 10 that was brought up?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
You had said maybe 10 days.
Oh, I see. So the way the law reads is that the notice is 20 days for planning commission hearings only. So when it goes to city council, a public hearing of this, that meets these parameters, only require a 10-day per state law. The way we wrote it, we said 20 days for both planning commission and city council. And we can keep it that way, or we can change it to be consistent with law. It's kind of a neutral.
I mean, we are asking developers to spend more money on notifications and stuff like that, and time is valuable. If it's a way to say, hey, we appreciate you, 10 days, let's speed along the process. It seems like if it's in alignment with the existing state law, that the 10 days might be a better idea. I'm open to understanding more about that.
Yeah, so what we could do is just change this to be very specific, that it's 20 days before the planning commission hearing. And that way, it's just the planning commission hearing, and when it goes to city council, it would be a 10-day notice.
Right,
Yep.
because it'd be the following week. Correct, okay. I think that would be seemingly better. I don't see a fault in that.
Thank you, Commissioner Bedard. Commissioner McPhail?
Thanks for the report. I think it's been a very well researched piece of work, and you looked at the different cities, and I think we've got a very good public notification process here. There's just one wee little typo on one of the tables about community engagement, where you said something about project sites of 5 or greater. I think it's 5 acres or greater. So when it goes to city, they probably want to say 5 acres or greater.
Probably, but that's under,
It's on the analysis table, the notification standards, and you've got a line, community engagement, and it just says project sites of 5 or greater. And I'm assuming it's acres.
5 acres, yes.
I had a couple small questions, one being, again, about the notification of people who live in rental apartments. So, obviously, if you are a homeowner, you'll send to that parcel because you have the parcel data. Likewise, townhomes and duplexes, you have the parcel information. An apartment will be one parcel, and there might be 10 apartments in it or 40 apartments. How do you know how many apartments are in there to send an individual mailing to? What data source are you going for that?
We would go through our building records, our business license records, and then contacting that complex to make sure we have the right number.
Okay, great. And then just regarding the signage, and I've gone back and forth on signage since we talked about it last time, but we're not going to address it this time. Now, does the current code have current standards or requirements for signage? I kind of did a quick search, but I couldn't find it, but maybe I was doing the search wrong.
Our code does not have any standards for public hearing signs, no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McPhail. I have two and a half questions. The first one is the CEQA exemption going to be the general rule?
The common sense rule, yes.
I forgot that they changed it
Yeah.
from general rule to common sense
Yes.
exemption. That just shows how old I am. Then my second question, which has two parts, is if you were doing a public hearing for In Shape Fitness, which would require a public hearing if it were new, if the lot that it sat on in the shopping center was 5 acres, then they would have to do a community engagement?
Ooh, good question. Good question. I think we have some flexibility with director discretion on that. And I think we would want to look at that and make a determination whether at that point it makes sense or not.
So there's language in there that gives the final discretion if there's a gray area to the Development Services Director?
Well, let's see, I thought we provided some discretion on the community engagement. I can look at that, if that's also the direction of the commission, we can put that in there if we don't have it.
Then the other half of the question on In Shape Fitness is, in different cities, when it's in a shopping center, there's different ways to measure the 500 feet. So using In Shape as the example, would you measure 500 feet from the lot that In Shape sits in, or the perimeter of the shopping center that it's in?
So your question is assuming that In Shape Fitness was on its own parcel?
Can you repeat that?
Well, the notification is from the property lines, and so if In Shape is in a building, but the parcel lines is the center, we would notify from the property lines of the center.
Okay. In other jurisdictions, sometimes when you have a situation like that within a shopping center, they just expand it to the perimeter of the shopping center, so I wasn't sure if we did it that way.
Yeah.
So it would be from their actual property line. If the shopping center was on one large property, then it would be 500 feet from that. But if it sat on a single lot within the shopping center, then it would be 500 feet from each point on the property line.
Yes.
There
Okay.
is language
Yep.
in here as well that offers the director the discretion to increase the size of that. So if we run into a particular situation where there's some peculiar measurement, we can err on the side of caution and increase the
Yeah, I think sometimes, well, In Shape might be a good example. I think when that went in, I don't know that anybody was aware of the impact from people throwing the 50-pound weights on the floor and, and the ground shaking. I don't think anybody even thought of that. And, so the next time we have a gym going in, we might want to think about how we measure the radius when that kind of thing happens. So I was just curious how we exactly measured it. So that's good. Is there any other questions of staff before we move on to discussion and/or a recommendation? So at this point, before we ask for, is there any other discussion anybody wants to have?
Will we have the opportunity to look at Commissioner Bedard's potential amendment that he talked about?
Oh, okay. And then I didn't, hold on. And I did not open the public hearing, so I need to do that. So before we do that, are there any members of the public that would like to speak on this item? If you would, give your speaker card to the secretary and step up to the podium. If there's not, then I will close the public hearing. Are there any virtual people that would like to speak? Or did we receive any comments specifically on this issue?
We have not received any comments from members of the public.
Okay. Now, Commissioner Bedard, so I think we need to get a motion on the floor first. But before we do that, I wanted to thank Commissioner Mead because I think she was responsible for bringing all this to light to get more people from the community involved, because we didn't really involve people that were renting property and the business owners. So I want to give her kudos for getting that on the list, on the work list, and actually moving it to getting it done. So thank you for that. Okay, so now we need a motion and a second, and then we can address your amendment.
Okay. So then I will make I was hoping to have a discussion about it before to understand it more, to make the motion,
What
but
you can do is, and the city attorney can correct me, you can make a motion with your change, somebody can second it, then we can discuss that.
Okay.
And then after that, we can After we discuss it, then we can call a vote. Did I get that right? Okay.
Okay, then, so I would move to have the days be 20 days prior to Planning Commission and 10 days prior to City Council.
Second?
Does anybody, did you second, Mr. Mc?
I did.
I think you need to follow the request because we have to accept the whole report and the amendment.
Yeah.
So the motion needs to include that verbiage.
Right, so Mr. McPhail seconded the motion with the amendment.
Maybe I need to make that clear, that to accept the presentation as is, with the one exception of modifying from the 20 days to the 20 days for Planning Commission, 10 to the City Council. I think I said that properly, our legal advice?
Yes, so just so we understand for the record, the motion is to go with staff recommendation to adopt the resolution recommending the ordinance to city council with that specific amendment regarding the 10 days.
Such good language you have there.
Does anybody have any discussion on Mr. Bedard's change and/or the motion in its entirety?
I have a question. So if someone, we have a couple, are the new notification requirements that would go out 20 days for Planning Commission, those will still be the same requirements applied for the City Council meeting, correct? It's just a shorter time period? And if someone signed up, let's say at a community engagement meeting and said that they wanted to get it, those people would also be notified for the City Council meeting?
Correct.
Okay, so for anything future, great.
Yes.
And just as a point of information for anybody listening at home, so the next step is for this to go to City Council, then there would be a second reading, and that usually takes about 2 weeks, and then after the second reading, it would take effect 30 days after the second reading, so people know the timing. Did I get that right? Okay, good. So is there any more discussion on either the motion or the amendment? If not, we can call a vote.
All right, let the record show that a motion was made by Member Bedard, seconded by Member McPhail. Motion passes, all ayes.
Thank you, Assistant Director Molina and Director Firestein for all your hard work on this. This is not an easy project, and appreciate all your attention to detail. So now we're ready to move on to non-public hearing items. Item 4A, 2025 Citywide Speed Limit Survey, to consider the 2025 Citywide Speed Limit Survey results. Mr. Balansaro.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. I'm going to be presenting the 2025 Citywide Speed Limit Survey. So basically, this study is to ensure that speed limits on the city roadways are in line with traffic conditions and public safety. So let's begin with if I can do this thing. Let's begin with the background. The California Building Code mandates that all cities establish speed limits over 25 miles per hour based on an engineering and traffic study conducted by a traffic engineer. This is to ensure that speed limits reflect the traffic and road conditions, and the traffic study need to be updated every 5 years. And if there is no significant changes in the roadway conditions or roadway and traffic conditions, that traffic study can be extended for up to 7 to 10 years. The last citywide survey was completed in 2019. In addition to the standard regulations, there have been updates in the state law that impact how we set speed limits. This is Assembly Bill number 43, also known as Traffic Safety Bill, or AB 43, that it was signed into law on October 8, 2021, and introduced changes to the speed limits and expanded the authority of local agencies where they are more flexible to reduce the speed limit based on safety considerations, land use, the presence of pedestrian groups like children, seniors, or individuals experiencing homelessness, and these need to be also justified by the engineering and traffic study. Also, AB 43 extend the speed limit if they are justified from 7 years up to 14 years and enable to lower speeds limits in business activity district. Let's moving forward through the process. On November 12th of last year, the City Council authorized to conduct the traffic study, and it was one of our on-call traffic engineers who was doing the traffic study. They have the previous experience because they did the 2019 citywide study, and the scope of work included the revision of the previous study, conduct new radar speed survey and 24-hour traffic counts, obtain the collision report, and also prepare the speed report with the recommendations and findings and recommendations. That requires some methodologies. He followed all the, through a combination of the requirements from the California Building Code. They also look for the collision in the last 3 years, collision history in the last 3 years according to the California statewide integrated traffic record system, statistical factors that are included in the manual for setting a speed limit from the Department of Transportation, and also guidelines on additional reduction for certain situations from the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The speed zones were set and are established to protect the public from dangerous behavior, and also the speed limit is normally set at the 85th percentile, and that represents 85% of the people driving at 85% of the people that is driving, the traffic is moving. The speed limits established on this basis conform the majority of the vehicles as to what speed is reasonable and prudent, and are not dependent on the judgment of one or a few individuals. The speed study done for 2025 included 74 roadways that were evaluated. 11 roadway segments were recommended for speed limit modifications, and the proposed speed limit modifications were based on prevailing traffic speed, collision history, roadway and traffic conditions, surrounding land use, proximity to schools, and safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. The study was presented on May 14 to the City Council. These are the 11. This slide shows the 11 segments that were recommended for modification. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that the City Council made comments and have raised some concerns in terms of the increase of speed. The two of them were Dade Palm between 30th Avenue and McCallum Way, increasing the speed from 45 to 50, and also Whispering Palms Trail from 30th Avenue to McCallum, that was increasing the speed from 25 miles per hour to 30. That was what was said on the original speed study. Also, during the study session with City Council asked the traffic engineer to reevaluate 4 different segments. One is Dade Palm from Vista Chino to 30th Avenue. They requested the reduction of speed from 55 to 50 miles per hour, looking at future projects and also looking at the presence of sidewalk and pedestrians. They requested to reevaluate Vista Chino from the west city limits to Dade Palm. Those are 3 segments that they ask for a reduction of speed due to the proximity to residential areas. And the last one was Whispering Palm Trails, just to maintain the speed at 25 miles per hour. Following the request from the City Council, the traffic engineer reevaluated the 6 roadway segments, and he found justification for 5 of these 6 roadway segments. The only one that was not able to find justification is Whispering Pines Trails between 30th Avenue and McCallum. Based on the current data, this segment requires further analysis before a formal justification can be made. So the recommendation from the traffic engineer is to postpone the traffic study for this segment, and is based on AB 43 that this roadway segment was not included in the 2019 citywide speed study, and also is not, because of that thing, is not subject to the same timeline as the other roadway segments that are in the study. And the second part of his recommendation is to amend the ordinance at a later date following the construction of the proposed Class 3 bike route project that is going to be going on in the next months on Whispering Pines from 30th to Dinosaur. That is a shared route between bicycles and vehicles. And then also at that moment, if we do a new traffic survey, we assume that the updated data will support enforceable speed limits. So with that, this slide in front of you shows 13 segments that are recommended for speed modification within the 74 that were studied in the citywide speed limit study. All of them are speed modifications reduction. The only increase is Santoro from 30th Avenue to McCallum. That is an increase from 25 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. With that, staff recommendation, staff is requesting that the Planning Commission recommend the findings of the engineering and traffic survey, modifying the speed limit on 13 roadway segments within the city limit for adoption by the City Council. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Balansaro. Any questions of Mr. Balansaro, starting with Mr. Lee?
Just about process, not really about the conclusions here, but so the engineers look at an 85% or percentile figure. Does that mean if everyone decides to speed on a certain road, we'll end up putting the speed limit up because they're speeding?
It is assumed that they use the 85 percentile because there is studies that says that 85% of the people driving in that street will be comfortable driving at, will show the speed that people is most comfortable driving. Yes, but there are another statistical factors that can be applied for the study. So there is the pace of range, there is a 10% analysis. There's not the 85 percentile per se, there's more statistical factors that can be included in the study.
Okay, I thought about that particularly in relation to Vistacino because in 2019 we put it up to 55. It was previously 50. Now we're putting it back down to 50. And I'm just wondering if the traffic will adapt or they'll just ignore. It's a theoretical.
If there is any changes in traffic, any modifications on the traffic patterns, it will be show up immediately, or it will be show up, and then we can reevaluate if the appropriate speed limit is 55. At this moment, the City Council had, or the local agencies have the possibility to lower the speed in 5 miles per hour if there are safety considerations or their land use nearby the roadway segment that they are evaluating.
How does the process work at the city limits? I'm thinking again on Vistacino. Currently, we're at 55 heading into Palm Springs. When you hit the wash, the Palm Springs have just updated that or reduced it to 45 from 50. Is there any communication across city limits as to what happens with speed? If we think about 111 going through all the different cities, generally speaking, it stays at one speed and all the lights are synchronized. So how does that happen with respect to this kind of report?
There is communication with Palm Springs and also the traffic engineer. The traffic engineer doesn't evaluate the segment as in a vacuum, evaluates the segments that are prior segments or the segment adjacent to this one to determine what is the speed that is appropriate according to the data, collisions, and different traffic patterns.
Okay. One last point, which is internal to the city, and my example there would be Cathedral Canyon, going from Dinah Shore to 111. Mm-hmm. And we have 3 different speed changes in that short segment. Again, how do we decide what a segment is? So, that first part from Dinah Shore down to Perez, well, actually to the bridge is 45, then we change to 40, then we change to 35 just over the Perez. So what determines a segment? What decides where those are?
The conclusion of the study referred from Dinah Shore, you will have 45 miles per hour until the hotel and Canyon Shores. Before the bridge, there's going to be a reduction to 40 just to get into the commercial business district that you have when you pass Kiley Road. That is at 35 miles per hour. So that will be the segment for the reduction, and is considered due to pedestrians, considered due to the business district that is ahead if you're driving southbound.
Right.
Okay, and there is also a consideration for pedestrian crossings. In Paseo Azulejo, we have a pedestrian crossing for people, and then probably in the near future, we are going to have the opening of CiviLink. There's going to be another crossing in Cathedral Canyon that will qualify for the reduction of speed in that segment.
I drive that particular segment frequently, mm-hmm. and it's my own observation that most people, they get from Dinah Shore, they start going south from Dinah Shore, and they're at 45, and they're going to be at 45 when they hit Perez. They're going to pretty much ignore the 40 and the 35, and then they're going to drop down to 35 after Perez. So I just wondered why we have those 3 different limits. But
those are established. They were surveyed, and people still the speed limit recommended continue being the same one as it was before.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Meade, do you have any questions?
The stretch on Vistacino, where that's going from 55 to 50, I drive that a lot, and I know I find it terrifying when I pull from a little side neighborhood street onto Vistacino and everyone's going 55. It seems like a big increase, so I think 50 is more appropriate. Was that reduced because, like you said, the road conditions changed, or was that reduced because of a concern from City Council about safety, or because Palm Springs lowered theirs and then there was going to be a really huge drop-off from 55 to 45?
It was reduced because the concern of the City Council applying AB 43 that allows the local authority to reduce if their safety concerns. There was the land use nearby is residential, like you mentioned, so there's some houses that they back out or come out from their driveways into Vistacino, and also there was the consideration of what's going on in Palm Springs, coming down from the wash, coming into the
So all 3,
the city.
basically. Okay.
All of the 3 were in
Okay.
consideration for the speed study, yes.
Thanks.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else?
Oh, no, I thought you were moving on to somebody else. I'm sorry.
Commissioner McPhail?
I guess I have a process question as well, but it's a slightly different one. Normally the workflow is things come to us, Planning Commission, and we will make recommendations to the City Council, and they will approve it or ignore our recommendations or include our recommendations or whatever. In this case, this went to the City Council and hasn't come to us before. And City Council made some changes and recommendation. Now it's coming to us, and then it's going back to the City Council. So what are we doing with it? And do we have an opportunity to change something? And then it goes to City Council. I mean, I'm not quite sure the workflow here.
My understanding was in 2019, the traffic study was presented in a study session to the City Council to see what their concerns were at that moment. And then in 2019, there was a transportation committee, or there was a traffic safety committee in the city that was reporting to the Planning Commission to recommend the findings of the study to the City Council. I wasn't here, probably Director John Corella can help me on that story, but that was the flow that you had in the past, and we're following the same flow.
So do we have the opportunity to do anything with this, or just say yes, or what?
You do have an opportunity to make a comment or recommendation. I will tell you that, I mean, this is presented for you to make comments, and if you really strongly desire something to be changed, the challenge is right now, and the process is done this way and has been done this way, to preempt it going back and forth. So really the City Council throws it out there. They're pretty aggressive on what they'd like changes to. The city, the traffic engineer only do what's prescribed in his ability that'll allow him to be in the defendable area where he can go to court and say, yes, this police officer can issue a traffic ticket based on this parameter. In this case, when it went to City Council, they had this laundry list of 11 items on there and said, we kind of don't like this. With the advent of passing of AB 46, 43, 46, it gives a little latitude, not wholesale, that they can drop it 5 miles an hour if it's at the lower end of the 85th percentile with factors depending on which district it is, whether it's a neighborhood or whether it's in a business district. There's different parameters. So it's on the skinny where it is. Now, I will tell you, years ago, Cathedral Canyon had 2 speed limits on it by the speed survey. In the business district is 35, and then above King Street, it went up to 25.
I'm going to be talking about
The
King
City
Street.
Council last time artificially lowered the 35 to 25. The police department was not allowed to do a radar ticket there. They knew that that was told to the City Council, well, you can't give a conventional radar ticket with that. It has to be a pacing ticket or a time and distance ticket. It's an old way of calculating speed before radar. In this speed survey, seems like everyone's been trained and everyone on the 85th percentile has been going that 25 to 35 range in there. Usually there's a 10-mile swing that lets you in there. So it has been done. So if you have an issue with a road that needs to be considered or something, this is your opportunity to add that in, a recommendation to take a second look at this. It is going to City Council for basically a first reading this next time, but this is what you're here for. If there's something that really concerns you above and beyond what the City Council stated, that's your prerogative as a commission. That's why it's here before you.
So if I can add on to the comments from Mr. Corella and Mr. Baldessoni, this is a little bit of a peculiar item. And in other cities that I've worked in, we've had a traffic safety commission. There's not a traffic safety commission here in Cathedral City. And it is correct that there is language in the municipal code in your authority that there is a streets and transportation subcommittee. I don't know when the last time that subcommittee ever met. That charge, though, really is to review streets and transportation with respect to Chapter 9 the zoning code. What we're working with here is in Chapter 12, the vehicle code. And as we look at the authority for local agencies to make modifications to speed limits, that authority is with the City Council. So I think this process is intended to provide a little more transparency, a little bit more openness, but I recognize that you might be in a position where you don't feel like you have the qualifications to be reviewing and commenting on an engineering and traffic survey. So something else to reflect on, and I don't know that we have another survey coming up here soon. This isn't something we're going to rinse and repeat here anytime soon, but if this is a process where the Planning Commission doesn't feel that it's the appropriate authority to be hearing this in the future, I think that's feedback that we all can collect to say, how do we do this differently in the future, while wanting to have openness and transparency. If you're not the right body for us to be presenting this in the future, that's something else we can consider.
The report also talks about the time between studies. The new law now could push it up to like 14 years between studies. So I'm not quite sure what would trigger a study earlier than 14 years, but does this theoretically mean that we may not do another study until 2039? Because we're here in 2025 and we're going to adopt one, and now this new law says you, under certain rules, you could wait 14 years to do another study.
That is part of the new AB 43 regulation, AB 43, and what it says is like it needs to be certified by the registered engineers that there were no modifications on the traffic patterns, and also there's not going to be modification on the street, on any street. Assuming that if you are adding a bike lane in some street, okay, that's a modification. So that will set that you need to do the study in the next 7 years. Okay. So unless nothing happened in the roadway conditions, physical, okay, any modifications in the roadway conditions or traffic patterns, then yes, you have the ability to do the next study in 14 years.
Right. Okay. I did want to talk about the Cathedral Canyon stretch from Kings Road to Terrace Road and the data that's in the tables here, because it's one I travel up with it, living in the code. And, you know, the report talks about the 85th percentile idea. And in the example of that particular section of Cathedral Canyon from Kings Road up to Terrace Road, you know, the 85th percentile speed is 38 miles an hour. The median speed is 31, and the actual sign says 25. And the recommendation is not to do anything about that. And apparently this was changed down a few years ago, I guess. And the justification says residential district. And I was wondering if maybe you could explain the residential district idea and how that kicks in.
Yes, the residential district, according to the vehicle code, you need to have in a quarter of a mile 13 dwelling units facing the street in a quarter of a mile in one side of the street, or 16 dwelling units in both sides of the street. Okay. So it's considered residential. The other point why it was not raised to the 85 percentile is because of AB 43 also allowed the traffic engineer to maintain the speed limit set if there is a record in the prior speed survey. Assuming Whispering Palms, like an example, Whispering Palm was not included in the last speed survey. So Whispering Palms today has a posted limit of 25 miles per hour. And because that was considered residential and it was not included in the last speed survey, he cannot justify that speed limit. In this case, because the speed limit was set in the prior speed survey, yes, he can recommend to maintain the speed limit that is posted and now is enforceable. That's it.
So why is this segment on Cathedral Canyon the only one that's identified as residential, whereas, for example, there are stretches north of Dinah Shore on the way up to Ramon that have a lot of houses on them, a lot more than 10 or 20, and yet the residential factor does not kick in for those stretches where Cathedral Canyon is like, what, 40, 45 miles an hour. So I'm not sure why that's not residential, but going up the hill is residential. How does that term get applied to one but not the other?
It applies, I will look at it doesn't apply as a residential district. I don't think it meets the qualification from the California Vehicle Code to be residential. It doesn't get to the...
There's more than 10 houses than 20 houses.
There's a lot of factors. The houses is only one. That's a 4-lane road considered an arterial.
Okay.
So it goes into a different category. So there's a big difference there.
Okay, fair enough. It just seems to me, as a frequent user of that road, and there are traffic cops at the top of Cathedral Canyon regularly who give tickets. I'm not sure what criteria they're using or what method they're using, but that is 25 by the own data is an abnormally slow speed for going up a hill, and it has been something in the past, and it seems strange to me that it has been not treated differently, but it does seem strange that we have this 25 speed where the rest is faster, and it used to be faster, and I'm not sure we can do anything about that, but I'm just making a statement.
It is considered, the surrounding land uses are residential, and then there are a few commercial places, and some commercial areas and vacant lots. And what the data that was obtained in the speed study is that the 85 percentile in that segment is 48 miles per hour. So
38, I think.
Yeah, it was 48.
48.
Yes, Ramon, you mentioned Cathedral Canyon.
He's talking about the area north
Kings
of...
Road
We've
north.
moved on.
Oh, I thought it
That's
was
okay.
Cathedral Canyon.
No
Sorry.
problem.
We're already up on near Kings Road and Terrace.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
okay.
That's okay.
I apologize. I thought that he was looking to the Cathedral Canyon, why it was not considered residential, and it was considered residential. And that's it.
It does seem that 85% of the people are doing 30 plus, and there's been 0 accidents by your own data on that segment in 4 years, and people potentially could get ticketed for doing what 85% of the people are doing, and there's never been any accident. That seems like a bit of a disconnect between reality and stuff. So
Once the speed limit is posted and there's no nuances whether you can get a radar ticket or not, in this case, the whole city will be able to be radar ticketed, you need to follow speed limit. So
it seems strange going up that hill that it's 25, and to get that residential designation is interesting. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Point of clarification, so the speed limit on that area in the 85 percentile is what?
25.
No, this marked speed limit, but what is the 85 percentile?
38.
38. Okay.
So 85% of people, I guess, are doing 30 plus
For a
going up
reason.
that hill. Because you're going up a hill. You go up that hill at 25, you'll be there in 2 days maybe.
Right. I think that's something to bring to City Council to make a request on. I haven't driven 25 on that. I understand.
And I have no idea what the neighborhood feels about it, but it just seems like a strange disconnect to me going up that hill and knowing that people have received tickets quite regularly
Right.
for
And,
that, for doing like 30.
right. And if the 85 percentile is much higher than what's posted and it's being done safely, I don't know why it wouldn't.
But within
be.
the guidelines of AB 43, it fits in that latitude, and the fact that it was already posted 25, no accidents, there's no,
And everyone's
was
doing
posted-
30 plus.
If it was posted 35 and no accidents, and
I get it if there'd been like a bunch of accidents, but there's been 0 accidents. So
Any more questions?
anyway,
I have 2 questions. They should be fairly quick. So if the study the recommendations are adopted, it's going to last 13 years. Is the recommendation from Vistachino from Quintanilla to the city limits, or might be Landau to the city limits, actually. So would that change when the bridge is finished?
There's can be modifications to, yes, there's going to be another, if required, there's going to be another engineering traffic survey to determine.
But
what
would the
is-
bridge impact the recommendation that you have now? Or is the bridge irrelevant and you would just, in a matter of time, review that segment?
The bridge is, a segment of the bridge is going to be in Cathedral City, the segment of the bridge, and the other segment is going to be in Palm Springs. There are going to be modifications to the roadway condition that right now is in wash. So probably after the bridge is completed, we're going to have an engineering and traffic survey to determine what is the speed limit.
Let me answer that globally for you. Anytime we do a project on the road and we change, if we do a repaving job, we're not going to change the speed limits. But if we change the characteristics, we widen it, put in a right turn lane or a left turn lane that wasn't there before, we're obligated to look at it and do an individual speed survey.
Oh, okay.
What this 14 years or the 7 years is to do a citywide survey whether we've changed the roads or not, we got to go look at every road again. But during that time, if you're on top of it and every time you change a road, you do a individual speed survey, then you could push it to the 14 years. Notwithstanding, at year 14, yeah, if we didn't do any changes to the road and we did all our surveys on the individual pieces we changed, we will still have to do at 14 years a citywide just to double check.
So when the bridge is done, then we'll look at that again.
Cathedral Canyon, when the bridge was done, merited doing a speed survey, which is essentially what triggered, and the timing that we needed to do it. We knew that we were going to do a citywide, so we waited to do the citywide survey that included that segment anyway. So it was an economy of, we knew it was coming up anyway, so we threw that in, and other segments of the roadways that have changed too.
So like when that project with the Wren and that street that's coming through onto Date Palm, that's going to have a light, would that trigger a survey for that section from McCallum to 30th?
Yeah, traffic signals don't necessarily change it, but since it was open space before, and now you have some residential fronting it, and we see significant changes in the traffic, or the police are issuing more tickets or less tickets, we'll look at it to do an individual speed survey.
Then, thank you. That's interesting to know that once you make the change to a street like that, then you do an individual traffic study, which I would think should be merited. My last question is, I hear from a lot of people on Tacheva, worried about their kids, and I noticed that it wasn't in the study, but I think it was mentioned indirectly that because it's residential, so it's automatically 15 miles an hour?
Because it's residential, it's 25 miles per hour. 25 miles per hour.
Is there any instance when you have a street like that that a lot of people use more than, a local corridor to make it lower than 20? And I'm not suggesting that we do that. I'm just saying, has that ever happened?
The Chiba is considered in a residential neighborhood. It was not. That's not.
Excuse me, my microphone's on. It's typically not heard of.
There's just a lot of people there are concerned. Does anybody else have any other questions before we open the public hearing?
Just a quick question. So in terms of what he was just saying on Tacheva, they could lobby to have like speed humps put in or something like that, right? Which would naturally, you could have a traffic calming thing put in even though the speed limit remains the same?
Yes, traffic calming. There can be traffic calming can be installed, And there is a process, we have the process to install traffic calming. We can go there, measure the speed, do the temporary traffic calming to know what is the best solution to reduce the speed in that.
You can explain there are some parameters that you cannot put speed humps on or you're limited to because of the miles per hour of the street too.
Yes, that's correct. And depends on the speed limit. You cannot put speed humps, or I think that more than, if I recall correctly, it's like you cannot put speed humps in more than 40 or 35 miles per hour.
Yeah, and the elevation can't be too high, and it can't have too much of a turn. We went through that on my last street that I lived on. My point is just to follow up on what he's saying, is that if the residents there have a concern, there are more ways to potentially solve their concern about slowing people down than just changing the speed limit, that there are other options that they could contact the city
There
about.
are other options. We
Yeah,
have a
okay.
temporary traffic calming process that we follow, and we determine what is the best solution. And usually what we have until right now, all the roadway segments that we check, is as soon as we put the speed feedback radar signs, the speed goes down and nobody speeds anymore. But
So let me.
and there are solutions for that thing.
Let me compliment what you're trying to say. And Armando's staff has done a great job working with Public Works and PD, and we have a traffic calming task force, which he's responsible for. In that task force, whenever someone calls and says, I'm getting speeding on the street, we'll put it on the task force. We have a trailer that has everything in there. We go put a secret radar in there that no one knows about for a few weeks. We actually, I shouldn't say this, we don't call the police right away because we don't want them to distort what we're going to see. If they're speeders on the street, we want to catch them on radar. It picks up the time, date, the hour, and a lot of times we'll see consistency. I'll use an example. One street, there's a guy or a gal or whatever was driving way over the speed limit at 5 o'clock every day. So you pick those things up. Armando makes the decision based on the data to get the temporary enforcement out there. And it could be a radar speedback sign, it could be temporary speed humps. And so we monitor traffic and see how they're reacting to it. And then in the last portion of it, if we're not getting success, we call in the police department and they'll heavily patrol that area. And in some cases, the person that complains ends up with a ticket and calls us up and says this. But that's the humor in it. But it has been very successful that the streets that Armando has basically assigned the task force to do and goes through the steps, and people are requesting speed humps, we've gotten to the point where we don't need the speed humps. They got it. We put a couple more different signs on there, maybe a flashing speed limit sign, maybe the radar feedback sign. I think that's the worst thing. We have not gotten to the speed hump portion because even the residents will see the success of it and really not necessarily want a speed hump because they're having to drive over it too. So it's worked out very well. It's
So
one of the more successful
we haven't used
programs that's happened.
the task force hasn't recommended speed humps yet, but just so that we're on the same page, we're talking about the kind of traffic calming device they have. We don't have them in Cathedral City, but in Palm Springs on Cerritos, it's a half street next to the Stater Brothers Center on the east side. And that's what we're talking about, but we haven't gotten to that level yet.
That's correct.
Okay. With that, it's not a public hearing, but are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this? And if there are none, then I will close the comment period.
Commissioner McPhail, if you think this is an important thing to recommend to council about that particular segment, I don't feel qualified to vote yes or no.
I'm in the same
And
boat.
as a resident, if you feel that should be looked at, the idea that, oh, it's been like that for a long time doesn't always sit well with me. But if you think that it's a concern of the neighborhood, or there's unnecessary ticketing or that type of thing that's happening, as a commissioner, I'm going to encourage you, or a resident, to maybe make a motion, make a statement. I don't know exactly the right language to actually put it out to city council. Please take a look at this particular section.
I kind of feel the same as you in the sense of not being qualified
I'm
and being one
abstaining.
person and being a resident. This is not my area of expertise. And obviously, this is a very comprehensive study that's been done, and I don't want to be Pandora's box where we pick something apart, but personal experience plus people that I know in the neighborhood, which may not be the majority of the neighborhood, so I don't know. But it does strike me, as Commissioner Lee said, that Cathedral Canyon, from like Dinah Shore on, it's a weird mishmash of different speed limits as you approach the 111, and this seems a particularly strange level to me. So if we can transmit to City Council some message saying, would you like to look at this segment again and return it to where it was, I would be okay in saying that if anyone else wants to.
I'll
go along
second
with
it.
that.
So Councillor,
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
So we don't have a motion on the floor yet.
Exactly.
Can we take a straw vote as to whether there's support for this?
look, what's even the right language, which is why what I was going to ask. What's the right language to even
First, we'll see
have
if
that?
there's support to make the recommendation, if we could do a straw vote for that, and then if there is, then we'll get the right language.
Yeah, I have a couple options for you. So you could include it formally as part of your motion to just maybe have staff include that, consideration in the staff report. Yes, you agree generally with the findings of the speed survey, but Planning Commission did want to make this one note of a separate, because obviously it's not included in the exact changes, but through the survey, you're saying, this particular road is just something that Planning Commission would like City Council to reconsider. Or you could, discuss it previously and then make a formal recommendation as well. So you can include it and say, yes, we recommend that staff take the findings of the engineering and traffic study. However, City Council to reconsider, and then
If we do it
whatever
that way,
street.
then if you support the whole thing except for that, you have to vote no.
No, it would just be, because this is just a recommendation, so staff is looking for feedback, right? So these are the findings of the engineering and traffic study, and so whether you agree with how they are written, that is up for the commission, and that's really what we're looking for.
Could we send it forward? I'm not comfortable with us approving it officially with that recommendation, so could we send it as an unofficial recommendation, as a minute motion, that the council consider that?
Correct.
And-
So, go ahead.
Can I interject here? The speed surveys and how it's done and why it's done is to eliminate, it's supposed to be based on data. It's supposed to eliminate, if you make this motion as a body, that's a good recommendation. If you make this motion based on one person's feeling, there's a kind of a challenge there, and you guys got to make, you as a commission's got to make that decision, because all the things that we do, putting red curbs up, we're limited. Putting a traffic signal up, we got to warrant it. Putting a stop sign, it eliminates, and it's actually in the code, it eliminates political and/or what do they call it? Persuasion to do something just because it feels good and it looks good. We got to be able to defend it. So if you make your motion, make it as in unison, or I can't say it has to be unanimous, but
But then that forces us, if we don't agree with the amendment, to vote no.
So that's why that secondary recommendation is there, that staff can include, there was discussion at Planning Commission
prefer door
of
number 2.
this specific site, and just to
your
mention
preference
that
is
this
for
was a
number two,
discussion.
The,
at
the,
my-
the one that the attorney's just mentioning. That it,
Yeah,
you repeat
we can include that in the staff report.
Yes, so it's just one of the things that we can include as far as background, whenever we take any of your recommendations to city council. If there is a discussion like the one that we are having, we do lay that out in a staff report indicating that there was discussion between the commissioners. They didn't feel the need to make a formal motion, but they did discuss the need to maybe possibly review
I
a
prefer
specific
that also.
site. So your motion would still stay the same as what you see in your staff report recommendation, but we will include,
So we want to make sure that the minutes notate that there was a discussion on this item.
Correct.
So that the city council sees that. And other than that, then, so there'll be there'll be something in the minutes, and would anybody like to make a motion?
Well, to clarify, just to understand this further, are there two motions that are happening? One to approve the minutes of the R, and the other one, do we take a vote on the recommendation, or is that just?
The motion just goes in there that there was discussion, and the motion to approve the report is our official recommendation, but
Okay.
the minutes are going to reflect that there was discussion, which is accurate.
Okay, and the minute motion would include the 85 percentile, and that there's actually precedent for where this is coming from.
and that's what we would
would be in the
include in the
discussion.
staff report.
Great,
So-
okay,
Wait, let's
thank
take
you.
a step back. So the motion's going to include a 5 percentile what?
No,
it's-
we spoke about how the speed limits are determined. One of the ways they're determined is through the 85 percentile.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
That's the minute motion. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion on this?
I'll move that the Planning Commission recommend the findings of the engineering traffic survey for adoption by the City Council.
Second. Oh, well,
No,
it's you.
I did not second it. I believe Commissioner McPhail did.
It's fine.
It still says that I seconded it.
You just need to vote.
Just vote for it.
Did you vote aye? You still got click aye. There we go.
All right. Let the record show that a motion was made by Member Lee and seconded by Member Chairman Malikoff, and that there was one abstention. The motion passes 4-0.
But you'll change the official minutes to reflect that Commissioner McPhail was the seconder.
I don't mind if you're the seconder, unless you don't want
Well,
to be the seconder.
Well, I don't want it to reflect something that didn't happen.
Go ahead and make that correction for me, and I will get that. I'm sorry, could you make a verbal correction for me so that I can get that in the record?
I couldn't hear you.
Could you make the verbal correction for me so I can get that in the record?
Well, I'd request that the minutes reflect who the correct seconder was, which is Commissioner McPhail.
Let me look back at that. All right, I'll have to go in and check that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Commissioners' reports. I will, usually don't do this, but I think I'll start. First, I wanted to welcome my brother and his wife, Lena, here from Houston, Texas. They're visiting, and I wanted to give them an official Cathedral City welcome. They've sat through this hearing, and I appreciate them doing that. The second comment I have is that we all went to the study session for the zoning steering committee. It was very interesting, and I hope that we have more of those to make sure that we stay on the same page. But I think that the thing that was very interesting is that, we're going to be more in the weeds as to, you know, the internal workings of the zoning ordinance, and they're more looking at it from a 10,000 square foot level. But the message that they sent loud and clear, which I don't disagree with, I don't think any of us do, is they want us to streamline the process and make it easier for people to get projects through, which I think we can do. But, you know, the design issues and, you know, how the parking lot works and things like that, that's going to be up to us. I don't know that they're all that interested in that kind of minutia, but that's our job. So that's my comment, and I hope that we do have more of those meetings because they were very interesting. Commissioner McPhail?
I have a couple of small things that I've let staff be aware of. One is just to thank them for all the transparent information they're putting out on the district website. For example, the GIS development dashboard. And I'm bringing the dashboard up in particular because I had a situation, this is what happens when you're in a board like this or a commission, people will ask you questions. And I got asked about a particular development that is on McCallum Way, just the west of Landau. I went onto the development dashboard, and it's actually not one of the projects that is defined on it, but you can very clearly see the 14 parcels. And they were asking, do you know anything about this? Is it going to happen? And there's no information about that particular one. And there's actually diggers there who are disturbing the earth. So on the regular dashboard, a particular development will have a couple of stages to it. We'll say under review, project approved, under construction, and completed. And I'm wondering if there's other milestones or notifications that the city gets about the progress of particular developments that could maybe be added in here so that we don't suddenly go from it's approved, oh, it's completed, that people have an idea that something maybe is actually happening or it's not happening, or if there's any other milestones that perhaps we could add to the dashboard for more information. So that was one comment, if there's something that we can add there. The second one is to do with, I sent an article to planning staff from the LA Times talking about the Coachella Valley and various efforts that are being made to improve the supply of affordable housing. And it really focused on a particular organization called Lift to Rise and what they have done in the Coachella Valley. And I'm sure that's one of the organizations we were probably in touch with. But it kind of made me think about our role in the housing supply and what comes to us and what doesn't come to us. I'm still kind of feeling my way around that. And I'd maybe be interested in the future for a presentation on affordable housing, particularly the barriers that the city faces trying to get affordable housing developments off the ground, financing organizations like Lift to Rise. Is our zoning code an impediment to getting affordable housing in the city? So I'm kind of interested in maybe some general discussion, FYI, about affordable housing in our city.
Maybe the National Core and or Lift to Rise. See, Lift to Rise doesn't actually build anything. National Core builds things, and they've built 3 things in the city, but if I can add to what you're saying is maybe they could come and do a presentation in the near future as to how, you know, they go about getting the workforce housing and any of the obstacles that they have. And if we could do that before the zoning steering committee completes its work, then we can take that forward.
That's the sort of thing, yeah, and particularly from our staff as well, that they have experience on the ground of, you know, because we do the housing element and we're meant to be pushing forward with affordable housing, and what barriers do they see as well as other organizations as well, and what we can do.
Plus staff's interpretations would be very helpful. You know,
and what our role is and is not.
Well, not just the zoning steering committee, because whatever we recommend as a committee will come to this commission. So that, I think that will be very helpful. It's a very good suggestion. I'm sorry I jumped in.
No, that's okay. And that's if staff have the time and ability to put that on their schedule. That might be of interest.
Commissioner Mead?
I just had a quick request, and maybe it's not necessary. I try to read all the city council agendas when they get posted, but somehow I always miss when things that we've passed here get heard by the city council. And I don't know if that's because sometimes they're non-public hearings but I always, there's been occasions where I thought, oh, I want to go to that council meeting in case they have discussion and I can provide context and a public comment about what we discussed here and why we, but I never see them. And I don't know if that's just because those happen to be the ones that I didn't read. So I guess I was just wondering for this particular one about the noticing, I would really like to make sure I'm at that meeting. So is there any way that you guys could just, even if it's just hey, this thing you guys passed is on next.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Lee?
Well, let me just follow up on the chair's comments about our joint meeting. So for many years now, I've been suggesting that we do hold those joint sessions. One of the roles of the Planning Commission is to advise. Advising the City Council is impossible if we never meet with them and have no communication with them. And in January, at the planning meeting that the council held, Council Member Carnevale said, he would like to see some regular meetings with joint meetings with the City Council and the Planning Commission to get feedback. And at our joint meeting, the mayor, at the end of the close of the meeting, said how much she'd enjoyed the session and would like to see more of them. And I have never understood why there seems to be resistance to actually scheduling those meetings. But I think that we should be looking at probably a 6-monthly meeting scheduled as a joint session where we can, and if there's nothing to talk about, we could cancel a meeting, but where we could give feedback, because we hear a lot of things here that the City Council just isn't going to hear. They're not going to sit and watch all our meetings, much as we would like them to. And they read the minutes, but that's not going to give them a clear understanding of some of the things that come up in our discussions. So I hope that we can encourage the city manager and staff to organize that as a regular session, as the mayor suggested. In terms of Lift to Rise, by the way, I know that Mayor Ross has done quite a lot of work with Lift to Rise. You might want to talk to her about her experience with it too. Thank you.
Commissioner Bedard?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on a couple things. So I like the synchronicity about affordable housing and building and different things of that sort. So I know I brought this up many times. I don't know the right language or how to request it or direct it. I have no idea. And there's an article that I really wanted to send you guys, and I didn't have all your emails. It was actually a show. It was a news program that was done on all the housing that was lost in Los Angeles, and how in LA the city is actively looking for other forms of housing beyond traditional stick frame, right? Housing that could handle tornadoes and wind issues and fire issues and stuff like that. And we kind of have, this particular article was done on an organization that's not far from us called Cal Earth, which was started by an architect that was hired by NASA to figure out housing on Mars. And he created a really cool forum called Super Adobe, and there was a whole article, whole news show that was dedicated to people in the Palisades who are now considering building these Super Adobe type of homes. A 1-bedroom, 1-bath Super Adobe of 800 square feet costs $3,500. That's literally how much the house costs to build. And affordability on housing and stuff of that sort is an issue. And yet, I wonder if there's a way to direct staff to look into these forms of housing. And especially at this point where we are in this zoning thing, and how do we find out about these forms of housing that are out there, the super doby, the hay bale houses? I know there's a hay bale house out here in the desert that's remarkable, and it's a show house. How do we find that information out? Can we get more of it presented to the committee so it's more of an option and seen or understood by people of what it could be, what it could look like, and what it could cost? Do I need to make a formal directive to staff to say, hey, is there a way you guys can put together a presentation of housing that, of course, meets all proper requirements as far as zoning and building and safety and all those types of things, entitlements and stuff like that? Or do we just go along with the housing that we have that's our...
I mean, I was going to say you could ask them to pass that information on to the consultants who are working on the development code update and ask that they include, based on their experience in other cities, other options for housing that...
I know, I just want to know a formal process, because I brought it up many, many times for the last year, even before I was on the commission. But it's kind of a passion of mine. But how do I engage now staff to actually...
Well, we have the list, and if you're officially asking to look at housing alternatives, isn't there the list that we have?
Yes, that's something that...
The current list is still stick frame housing that I'm aware of.
So a couple things. One, you can request to put this on a future agenda. We have a work plan for the Planning Commission, and that is something that I was going to raise in my comments as well. It's working really well. We have a few more items. We'll add housing to that, and we can add this item too. My caution is simply where this fits, and if this is Chapter 9 or if this is building code. So I think as we're looking at the zoning code update, I think it is important to look at the development standards that we have in residential zone districts and whether they permit a range of housing types. I would say right now, if we look at our zoning code, it doesn't say stick frame only, or it doesn't talk about construction types at all. That's a building code item. So Jeremy Fry was here previously to talk to you about our building code. We are entering a new building code cycle. We will be considering the 2025 building code. So this may be a question that is appropriate for the Planning Commission, but it may be less under the umbrella of Chapter 9 and the zoning code, and may be more appropriately directed to our chief building official, the 2025 California building codes, and what we need to do to ensure that we are open to a range of building types. We can come back, though, and present more information to the Planning Commission on that.
I would absolutely adore that, just because one of the constant, it's kind of like we talked about the shade structures. One of the constant requests is that we need shade structures, we need shade structures. How can we support that? And one of the constant mantras I hear in the community, and even here on staff and council, is we need more affordable housing. And when there are ways to actually do it that are truly feasible and being done right now, it would be awesome. And I would love to participate, maybe finding some of those organizations or those builders or people that could do those presentations or something of that sort to support that. But it just seems like right now, with what's happening, it could be a very valuable time to start. Maybe it's another zoning code update or building update or whatever it is.
My thought, and I don't want to go too far in the discussion on this, my thought is it doesn't fit in the zoning code, but it may fit in the building code. Let's ideate on that, and we can bring this back.
I would just add something that I brought up with you recently was the ability to be fully off-grid within the city. And that might dovetail in with that as well in terms of building code.
We'll take a look at that too.
With that, Madam City Attorney, do we have any comments?
No comments tonight, thank you.
And are there any staff comments, including when our next meeting is?
So you have a future agenda list in your packet. This includes some items that are driven by the staff or applicant, and then there are also a couple of items in here that are generated by the commission. So you will have an economic development update coming soon from Eric Besserell, and we'll also invite Eric to provide a housing update, and we'll see if there's a partner organization, an allied organization that we want to bring in as well, but we'll do a housing update for the commission too.
So the first meeting in June, there will be a meeting?
Yes, we have a meeting on June 4th. And then beyond that, we're also responding to the commission on the cottage food industry and Miko's. So we will be bringing that forward here
Well,
soon.
thank you, and we appreciate all the hard work that you put into, staff puts into everything, including Don and Manny and
It's an incredible staff. They're all doing
Incredible staff.
exceptional
I was trying to remember the guy at the counter's name. I couldn't-
Skip.
Skip, that's
It's
right.
wonderful. They're wonderful staff. They're doing great work.
But thank you for all that you do. With that,
Mr. Chairman,
we're-
Mr. Chairman, may I make also a couple of announcements? I apologize for
okay.
interrupting. I did want to make a couple of announcements with regard to the development code update. So we had our biweekly call yesterday, and they did set out a preliminary schedule for the rest of this calendar year. We will have 2 Planning Commission work sessions to talk about the draft development code. The first one is scheduled for October 15th. The second one is scheduled for December 17th. I know that's getting close to Christmas, but hopefully you will be here for those meetings, whether we have an agenda item other than this, we don't know, but we expect those meetings to be very active and probably take an entire evening. So please plan to attend those if you are able to. Then I also wanted to make the announcement, just as a reminder, tomorrow morning is the Esperanza Park grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony. That is from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Myself and Eric Besserill will be there trying to gather feedback from our kids. We've got some crayons and chalk and good stuff, so we'll send them home with some prizes and some sugar. And hopefully we'll get some good feedback from our young people. I also wanted to note that the steering committee is comprised of 6 meetings in total, and that one of the other things I wanted to add, I know you mentioned Lift to Rise. Lift to Rise was invited and did participate as a stakeholder on our stakeholder interviews, so they did give feedback. And just to be clear about that, what staff did is gathered a list of about 25 people and gave 25 contacts and information to the consultant team. Consultant team reached out to them and let us know who responded and who didn't respond, but did not share any of that feedback with us. So they shared it in general, and you heard that at the joint session, but they haven't shared that with us directly. So I just wanted to clarify that.
If you could make sure Danielle and I get the next online meetings for the task force, so that we can have it on our schedules.
We'll certainly do that as soon as those are scheduled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, at 7:38, I will adjourn this meeting. I can't touch this.